Along the presentation, I'll kind of tell you the committee that we are looking at to look at the parking meter project in Uptown. But we were able to meet just to hear what they had to tell us in terms of what they've learned as a result of this national conference that they attended. And we got some good stuff. And again, some of the technologies that are out there are the apps that people use in terms of parking management, pay by phone, mid-block meters, and per space coin meters, and then of course solar panel meters. But when we met, we were able to discuss those things, just this month with those members, and that included again Metro and Uptown Columbus was a part of that, and I'll give you those names right after this, and to include our auditor as well.
And Deputy City Manager Goodwin, let me just ask a quick question, I think make a point, that the big piece is that one that says public input meeting.
Yes.
So the chronology of events, the anticipated chronology of events is kind of going to be determined by the input from that public.
Exactly.
So we don't want people thinking that this is a drop-dead date, because the input they provide is necessary, and it's going to be listened to.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, and that's what this is all about.
I didn't want it showing up on the media and people say, well, they're going to be here in February of 12.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And I'll go through that. But
right.
again, we had our first meeting again, the initial meeting was this month. We will then have vendors that will come in to this group that we're going to meet with, and this group, of course, again, will be made up of Metro personnel, Uptown Columbus, Columbus State University, and then members of the Uptown Board. A few of them will be here, as well as the police department will be on board, and I'll give you those names shortly. But we're looking at, in January, hearing from some of the vendors so that they can share with us what the technologies can do for our community and the various types of technologies there are. We can actually kick the wheels, if you will. And so that's what this is about. After we have looked at that to see what is out there, we will then hold that public meeting because we want to hear from them. We want to know what they would like to see. Is it that you'd like to see parking meters on every street in Uptown? Do you just want to see certain high level, those high use streets to have parking meters on it? We want to hear and see what they want to see in Uptown. We're not going to make the decision. We're going to hear from them, get that input. It may be that you just want it on Broadway, First Avenue. You may want to extend it all the way to 3rd, 14th, 9th. We don't know. We need to hear from them. And then the type meters. We'll share with them what we have learned, and then they may be able to give us some, some ideas as well. And so that's the whole point of this. Letting them know what we've heard, you tell us what you'd like to see, and then getting that feedback. And after we have done that, gotten all of that feedback, then of course we will then come back to council and let you know what we heard from the citizens regarding this issue.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Councilor Davis?
Yes, ma'am, Deputy City Manager Goodwin. And you're probably going to get a pot full of all kinds of responses on that. But let me just tell you from our perspective, or how it's viewed from where I'm at. When we asked you, this is more. This is it's a parking management issue.
That's correct.
And that we're trying to manage the parking in the area, and we're trying to push people to the parking decks and places like that. So if you got premier spots or premium spots, certainly that becomes a management issue. I don't look at this as a revenue generator or anything else. It's clearly with the hotels, the convention hotel, and limited space, it becomes a parking management matter to push people in the right, or push vehicles in usage in the right area. So it's not really, we're just putting meters in, and hopefully that's not how it's presented to the public. But that should be the focus. It's a management tool to utilize parking down in that area efficiently and allow for that usage to be used efficiently and just having the spaces available is.
You're
is
absolutely
what I'm
right.
saying.
It's not about parking enforcement, it's all about parking management. Making what really, at the end of the day, we want to provide opportunities for everyone to be able to utilize parking on street. And so we got to have that constant turnover, and this is going to help us get to that point.
Right, and along with that, I think you're talking about strategic areas.
That's correct.
So.
Yeah. But again,
yeah.
we don't want to say what those areas are going to be. We want to hear from the public.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I mean, and it's going to take a lot of work from the staff, too, to figure out that, because you guys, I guess that's the whole idea, is to push the parking in the right direction. You have to figure that out.
Yeah. It's going to be some work, and that's what we're looking to do. And then, of course, once we've come and presented the findings from those public meetings, we'll share with council what that looks like. We will then go back and create those specifications so that we can put out to bid and see what type of response we get back in terms of what we're looking for in terms of this parking management tool.
Councilor Thomas?
I would like to make a suggestion. I've heard a lot of conversation from business owners in Uptown about their employees and where they can park and the fact that they have to go now and move their car and all of those kinds of things. And I don't know if it would be possible at the parking meter demonstration session, but certainly at the public input meeting, I would like to request that we contact all of those businesses, I would think from the river to about 3rd Avenue, 2nd Avenue, 9th Street to 14th Street.
Sure.
With a flyer and say, we're having this meeting, come to this meeting, let us know what you are experiencing, let us know what you need. I know that there are a number of businesses in the area that have parking lots, and some of them share with other businesses in the area. We need all of that input so
That's
that
right.
we can do whatever is most beneficial for everybody there. So, when you said parking meter demonstrations, I thought, that might be something I'd like to see. Just what's out there and what are our choices kind of thing. But particularly for that February meeting, let's make sure that we get a flyer or an announcement or something into the hands of every one of those businesses so that they know that the meeting is going to take place.
That's right.
And they can be there and have their input.
Okay, and the beauty is that Ross Horner is a part of this, and so what he will be able to do as the CEO and president of Uptown is we'll be able to shoot that out to every business in the Uptown for us.
Well, but
And so-
there are other businesses in that corridor that may not be members of Uptown. I'm thinking, for example, some of the people that have offices in the corporate center. They may not be members, but they need to know that this is what we're doing because it will affect their customers. So.
Well, we will ensure that every business in
Just
Uptown
make sure
receives
that
it.
they all are.
Yes, ma'am. We'll make sure that happens.
How far
Thank
north
you.
does the parking management area go?
14th, it goes
14th?
from 9th, or from 9th to 14th, and then from, Bay to 3rd. Bay to 3rd.
Because there is
Third.
development taking place there on 13th, and that may necessitate at some point looking to widen it or lengthen it by a block, maybe.
We'll look at that. Thank you. And of course, again, we'll do the specifications and then come back with a recommendation to this council. Just to quickly just show you what some of the other communities have, Macon-Bibb County, they use technologies that include a parking app. And that's something that certainly we want to look at. And the meetings that we'll have, the demonstrations will show us how that's used, where people will be able to, from their phones, reserve a parking space without actually being there, parking in there. So they'll be able to reserve and do those, and those are the kinds of technologies that we love to see. Miami, Florida, again, pay by phone, mobile app, same thing, that's kind of what they're using. And of course, you can get all different types and looks of parking meters. Charlotte, North Carolina, again, uses this system, and you can see, so far, everybody's using the apps. Everybody using these apps. Then, of course, Montgomery, Alabama, different look, but also using the Park Mobile app. Savannah, Georgia still uses some of the coin meters, the old coin meters, solar panel meters, they also use those. But again, they utilize the app. So everybody is getting in that new technology. Atlanta, Georgia also uses a number of different integrated mobile apps, not just one in particular, but several that integrate with their system. Those that we are working with, of course, on the committee, including myself, is John Redmond, our internal auditor, will be a part of that. The Metro Director, Rosa Evans, Everett Fleming, who is the manager of the planning for Metro. Then our manager for our parking management division, Tarana Crawford. Then Ross Horner of Uptown Columbus, Reynolds Bickerstaff, who is the board chair for Uptown Columbus, will be a part of that. Jeff Davis, Columbus State University, and Command Sergeant Grant with CPD. And so those persons will be a part of pulling all of this together and working with us on that, just to make sure that nothing is overlooked, nothing is, no misstep in terms of this process.
Councilor Woodson?
Lisa, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I had a question for you, because I was just in on Clearwater, Florida, and I saw some of these, but we didn't use an app. Are these that you've been demonstrating you can use an app, or you can just put your credit card while you're right there?
Both.
You could do both on
Yes.
these that you're looking
You
at?
can, yes, but you
Okay.
can do it again on all of these, the technologies with apps. You can, because in order to do it on the app, you have to use a credit card, debit card or something
Right.
in order to reserve that space.
Okay, and when I'm thinking of an app, I'm thinking about my phone, I'm
Right.
downloading an app, but not everybody downloads things on their
That's right.
phone. So that's why I was asking, is it has the capability to just go ahead and put your license plate in, put your credit card in, and they'll just go ahead and take care
In
of it?
addition to the app, it's still used the old-fashioned way where you can actually put your money in, your card in, or otherwise. And so
Yeah.
it's, yes.
Because the one I was using in Florida, you can either put your money in it, you can use your credit card, or you can use an app. You
Yes.
had those three choices, so there was no way,
Yeah.
that could be mistaken. Now, I was curious to see how did they know, that you paid or not. But on one of them, I had to put my license plate. And that's how they knew how it was. Another one, I had to put the little paper on my windshield.
Okay,
So,
yes. That lets them know.
I've been experiencing there's different types, so I'm glad you're going to bring them, we can discuss.
That's right.
I have one suggestion. I saw the committee, and I think it's wonderful, but I think at some point, we should have a citizen or a user to be a part of it, because
Okay.
they're the ones that are going to be using it from day to
Great
day.
idea.
I'm just thinking about, and Judy, you're right, my son-in-law works at downtown, and he's gotten a couple of tickets because he don't move it every, and I told him, well, you have no business doing that, you should go in the parking lot anyway.
And maybe we'll look at a business in one of the businesses.
But, and two, a little bit reminder of the past, what happened with Uptown is too many employees were parking in front, and business, and customers didn't have no parking. That's how all this came about.
Which still happens today.
Right, and the owners were upset because people weren't coming to their businesses because they didn't have parking, but the reason they didn't have parking was because the employee was parked there.
But again, that
Just to bring
goes,
our new people kind of up to date on how we came to this completely.
that goes back to the whole parking management plan and the idea. So that's what we're going to be looking at, all of those things.
Okay, thank you. I was just
Additional-
wanted to add those 2 points
Okay.
and see. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Doesn't appear to be.
Okay.
Oh, wait, we got one more. Councilor Davis.
One other comment I'd like you to focus on too in your discussions is you may want to look at the matter of valet parking. And, you know, just a lot of us, we tend to take the easy route. And so if I got to pay $7, $8 over here, you know, I'm going to go look maybe for an easier route to take, which might be parking on the street. So those areas, sites are going to be premium. And, you know, people are going to tend to try to find an easier way to do things, and that's where your parking management comes in and sending them in the right direction if they make that choice. So you may want to focus on, since there's I think there's a lot of valet activity starting to come into the uptown area and the community area. That just kind of, I think that's going to be a interesting area to try to work on.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you. We'll look at that.
I think that's
All right,
it.
thanks.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, next I've got our Finance Director, Angelica Alexander, with a monthly finance update that is also going to address the reserve fund or fund balance.
Good morning. So I'll start first with the monthly financial snapshot. This is as of November 2019. Just starting to the right of the snapshot, the general fund, when comparing November 2019 to November 2018, is up 10.14%. The other local option sales tax fund is up 9.04%. The stormwater sewer fund is up 1.30%. The paving fund is up 0.92%. The medical center fund is up 0.90%. The integrated waste fund is up 2.52%. The emergency telephone fund is down 12.88%, and again, that is just a timing difference. I do fully expect that this will stabilize as we get further on through the fiscal year. The state started collecting this particular revenue source back in January, and so there are timing differences in when we actually receive the certain revenues within this fund. The Economic Development Authority fund is up 0.90%. The debt service fund is up 3.15%. I'm sorry, 315.25%, and that is due to the refunding that we did earlier this year. So that's the reason for that abnormality. The transportation fund is down 6.43%, and again, that's a timing difference in terms of the revenues when they were posted in November 18 as opposed to November 2019. The Trade Center Fund is down 12.23%. Bull Creek Golf Course Fund is up 7.14%. Oxbow Creek Golf Course Fund is down 3.30%. And the Civic Center Fund is up 1.70%. Moving further down the snapshot to the other local option sales tax revenues, the public safety summary, we have year-to-date revenues reported of just over $9 million. As far as the expenditures, year-to-date is $10.7 million. The other local option sales tax infrastructure revenue is roughly $3.8 million. With expenditures being reported of just over $500,000. We move over to the left side of the snapshot, particularly referencing the general fund expenditures. So the goal as of November 2019 is that you would be at or above 58.33%. So those departments that are highlighted in yellow are the departments that are outside of that current goal, starting with the litigation in the city attorney's office. Again, we're still defending several million in claims. For the information technology department, again, there's a timing difference in terms of when we pay several annual software lease maintenance agreements. Again, this is one of those departments that'll stabilize as we get further on in the fiscal year. For the employee benefits, we recently made our annual death benefit and major disability payments. That is a once-a-year expenditure. So I fully expect that this, again, will stabilize as we get further into the fiscal year. The real estate, this is due to the building maintenance and repairs that we're currently making at Legacy Terrace. This is obviously offset by revenues that we receive within the general fund, as well as some fund balance that council approved the use of to make those repairs, those major repairs. For the engineering department, this is again due to the annual payment for the Motorola maintenance contract. This is a payment that's made at the beginning of each fiscal year. So this will stabilize as we get further in FY20. For the jury manager, this is due to the jury summons subscriptions that we pay at the beginning of the year, as well as the pettit jury fees. You know, that is something that you try to at best estimate, but it just really all depends on the amount of jurors that the judges may need. So that is definitely on the watch list for this year. And then for the public defender's office, we pay that monthly contract to the state 1 month in advance, and so this will always be on this list, but again, nothing that I am concerned about at this point in time. So that is the monthly finance snapshot in a nutshell, and I'll entertain any questions for council before moving on to the next presentation.
Any questions? Doesn't look like it.
All right. So the next presentation here, I was really excited to share this information with City Council, and the City Manager advised at the previous council meeting that we would come back at an update, because I just, couldn't keep still with the news that I wanted to.
Yeah, Mayor, she was so excited. She wanted to do it at the last meeting.
That's all.
So jumping right into the presentation here, FY19, we are pretty much coming to a close with our audit. I would say we're roughly 97-98% done with the FY19 audit. However, I have to leave a sort of disclaimer on this slide because that audit is not yet complete. But right now, the estimated fund balance for FY19 has a total of 81.24 days, 34.29 days in the general fund.
Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
40.62 days for OLOS Public Safety, and for OLOS Infrastructure, 6.33 days, again for a total of 81.24 days. So this chart here is just a depiction of the fund balance history going back to FY08. Where it was all comprised of the general fund, and we were at 102, just over 102 days. And again, this just shows the last 12 years. I mean, the thing to note on this particular slide is for fiscal year 14, there was a change in the way we reported our reserves in terms of the long-term notes receivables that we had on the books. So I just wanted to make note of that change, and then you'll see as we, migrate from year to year, we've had a steady increase in our fund balance reserves to get to this particular point. This slide here just shows the composition of fund balance in terms of it in a percentage.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Back one.
Mayor, Councilor Thomas.
Ms. Alexander, in looking at this, in 2008, we did not have the OLOS fund.
Correct.
2009 is when we first started collecting, and in 2010, I recall that we had to
Roll back.
that. Is that why 9 and 10 does not show any OLOS fund contribution to the fund balance?
Correct. We didn't have any reserves really to report for those 2 years, and that's why you'll see in FY '11, we show the reserves from OLOS.
And each year that has, well,
Each year since FY '11, the OLOS fund has been included in the makeup of our fund balance, and, it fluctuates. For the most part, it has increased over time, primarily due to us needing to maintain our 60-day level. But as we can see on this next slide, we're really trying to reverse that trend. Again, this just goes back to where we were in 2008 with 100% being general fund reserves. And this just showing the composition of OLOS versus general fund over time. You can see the decline in the general fund balance from 2008 to 2016. But over the last 3 fiscal years, we've sort of reversed that trend in 17, 18, most certainly 19, where we're at 42% of the general fund reserves being our reserve balance. So that is a significant change from where we were when we were down to 54.54 days in FY '16.
Councilor Crabb?
Thank you. Okay, walk me through this a little bit further, because OLOS funds can only be used for certain things. And the general balance, the fund balance is funds that we have for emergency purposes. Is that, or
Well,
it's our savings
It's our
account?
savings, essentially, yes.
Okay, so it's kind of confusing to me to have funds in our savings account that we can't use, that are, designated for something that we can't use for just anything. Does it give us a little bit of false security to have funds in there that have special purposes?
And I'll yield to you to respond, but I would say to you that, it's an emergency, in an emergency, if there were an emergency, and those dollars are in reserve, this council could make the decision that we've got to take care of the emergency. The only restriction is the restriction around this table, where you said we're going to put 70% in public safety and 30% for infrastructure roads. But, if we had a dire emergency, you can say this council could you could handle it.
But I will add to that and say that if there were some cataclysmic event that
Yes.
shut off our revenues, we still have to pay public safety. So that OLOS funds that's in reserve would, in all likelihood, still be earmarked entirely for public safety as we continue to try to, that savings account is there in case something happens with the economy or some kind of, military issue. We'd have to operate the government, and that's part of operating the government. So I would anticipate that OLOS reserve would be primarily focused on public safety as it was intended. But the city manager is correct. That split was done by a resolution. Could not make it a law because you can't bind future councils, but it was intended to accurately express the sentiment of council that that's what they wanted that done for. And I know there's even been talk about trying to renew that every 5 years, every 10 years, if that's a desire, just so that the new sitting council can express their intent for the use of that money. But I will tell you, we have been focusing on trying to get that a little more balanced, and we made a little headway this year. Excuse me, the challenge is that when you've got that money in your savings account. And I hate to say that because it makes the public think that there's a pot of money sitting out there. And these are fluid funds. They're used to cover our expenses throughout the year. It's just that at the end of the year on our balance sheet, it shows that we had that little bit of an increase. But the tendency is to want to provide some of the capital items that we have held back on. And certainly that's under the purview of this council, but if you do that, then it kind of minimizes, maybe even negates the advance we've been able to make on increasing the percentage of our fund balance that is attributed to the general fund. Does that make sense?
Well, and I think it lets bond rating agencies know, it lets the Government Finance Officers Association know where they say no less than 60, and we have an administrative policy of 90, that if something happens in our community, that we can buy time to get out of that situation and we're not bankrupt. We don't have to just shut down.
Right.
And there have been cities
Or
in
bankrupt.
Georgia that
Oh,
couldn't make
yeah,
payroll.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, there's been cities that have gone bankrupt,
Yep.
so, okay.
Is that all, Counselor?
Yes, thank you, I appreciate it.
Counselor Davis?
Yeah, and I was going to say, just keep in mind, I think we all know and remember, and I'm sure we're going to be reminded again from the external auditor. I think the last time he came in here, he said that he wanted this body to work towards a 75-day goal in the fund balance, or what we would call reserve. That's where he would like it to be. It's a challenge to get there, but you're going to have to keep chipping away at it, and it looks like we can do that. The one thing that I wanted to piggyback off on, we're talking about a restricted fund when we talk about OLOS. I mean, it is a restricted fund. It's restricted to the 70/30. But what people get confused about, everybody says, well, you didn't give it to this person, or you didn't give it to that person, or you didn't fund this, that. That money goes in a lot of different directions and covers a lot of different departments in public safety. And not only personnel, but also capital improvements and things of that nature, whether it's software enhancements, technology. It's moving in a lot of different directions under the heading of public safety. But it actually goes over into the judicial side of this government. And then when you talk about the infrastructure, there are several aspects there that it's covering, whether it's the integrated waste fund, a landfill, or road construction projects, things of that nature. So that money gets spread out real quick and somewhat it's used, it's budgeted. So there's not any extra, and if you do want to do something and pick one department that you say that didn't get what they requested or how it was presented, or whatever, you got to take from somebody else. It's got to come from somebody else to go over there. I mean, because the money has been budgeted and it's spread, it's put in places and used. And it's based, I think, Ms. City Manager, correct me wrong, but it's somewhat of a calculated percentage. It's a percentage, especially in our larger, like CPD, Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, our larger departments, but it's kind of been dedicated on the judicial side and some of those areas for whether it's personnel or services and all, but the percentages, if more money comes in, a greater percentage goes to those larger departments to utilize, but they utilize it, and if they didn't, they would have to go into the general fund, or the money that's being budgeted out of the general fund, and they wouldn't have enough to make it work. They really wouldn't. So that's just something that gets confused, I think, in conversation out in the community and how people perceive that penny. But I don't know what this city would do without that penny. I mean, that was one of the biggest infusions of improving our community and providing services that I've ever seen. I mean, it's talked about in many ways, but when you really break it down, where would we be today without that penny? I just asked that question. I would hate to have to manage that budget, or to even be the budget chair or anybody involved in that. I'd hate to.
34 days.
Oh my gosh, I'd hate to be running the finances of this government, because I'd hate to be managing this city manager. It'd be tough making those decisions, because that wouldn't be a pretty picture.
That's right.
But that's just something that I don't think is seen a lot or talked about in the community, but, I mean, this number right here is incredible, and I think it also includes a carryover from last year, if I'm not mistaken. So it's all put in there together, but that's just a sign of good management. I think the citizens can look at it. I mean, we're financially in good shape and meeting the goals that you know, have been asked from that standpoint, and being good physical, financially accountable to the citizens of Columbus. So I'm hoping, Mr. City Manager, that this year, it was kind of interesting on that graph on a couple of years of, I think I know the answer to it, but I want to ask what were the big issues that caused a depletion in the general fund, the fund balance as far as ending days. I think I know the answer to that, but that's an interesting question. But I'm hoping we can do some of the things that we've always talked about this year in our budget. We've never been able to because of the, you know, not having the funds. So I'm excited about that, Mayor. I'm looking forward to your budget.
Me too. Thanks, sir. You want to continue?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Just picking on what Councilor Davis said, we authorized 187 positions in the various public safety departments to be paid by the OLAW. So when people say, usually when they say 70%, they say for the police department. No, it's not just the police department. It's all public safety, and it's a total of 187 positions that are authorized to be paid out of this.
Yes, sir.
And that's a great point. To add to that, another thing that gets confused out in the community since we're having this discussion is you hear a lot about the 100 police officers. And you know what, well, you don't have them hired, where's all that money? Well, that money is budgeted. It's budgeted. If you do hire them, you can hire them. I mean, it's not like they're knocking our doors down, signing up to be a police officer these days, or part of the sheriff's office. Not a lot of, you know, it's a very competitive market, but those positions are funded. And if somebody does and they go through training and they make it, the money's got to be there to pay these people. So it is there, and it's budgeted, and it's pretty much earmarked. And then, of course, we've made some very crucial decisions around this table and using some of those positions and the funds to do recruiting and retention and putting additional pay plans in place, which that's been a good thing that this council's been able to do as well for public safety. I'm going to say it's not enough, but we keep chipping away at it. With what we have, we can keep chipping away at it, and so that's been a good thing. But that gets confused in the community as to, you know, we're not managing, or the city's not managing the money well, or it's being hid somewhere, it's going somewhere. No, it's not. It's all being accounted for.
Very good.
That's a great point, the 187 positions, because we also fund out of this OLAW's 1,318 supplements to our sworn officers, in addition to the positions.
Mm-hmm.
So this chart here is just shows where our differences, our major differences come into play in terms of the budget for FY19, where we were, what we budgeted, what we actually received. Obviously, just to sort of caveat this slide before I really get into the weeds, a lot of this, about half, almost half of what we show here as the difference is already included in our FY20 budget. So we did recognize some of these increases as we made our budget projections for FY20. But the sales taxes, having a difference of $2.9 million, this is just general fund, $2.9 million in sales taxes over budget. Insurance premium was over about $1 million. Georgia Power franchise fees was over about $900,000. Recorder's Court fines were over about $900,000, and this really didn't pick up until the last quarter of the fiscal year. So that could have had something to do with the additional judges that council authorized in Recorder's Court. but that really picked up in the last quarter of the fiscal year. The investment income, that's up a difference of almost of $400,000, and that's just having more money on hand to invest in terms of us receiving any revenues from our investments. Insurance, real estate transfer fees was up $325,000. Sheriff fees up $225,000, and that's for the state prisoner housing, the transports, the bonds that are paid at the, when you bond someone out, that's all encapsulated in the sheriff's fees there. The payphone fees that was at the Muskogee County Prison as well as the Muskogee County Jail, that being up over budget, $225,000, as well as our tax commissions being up about $200,000. And that is the commissions that we receive for the services provided by the tax assessor's office, the tax commissioner's office to the Muskogee County School District, as well as the bid districts. So that, in a nutshell, is the presentation, and I'll entertain any additional questions from council at this time.
I think they're all grinning ear to ear and don't have any questions.
You're talking about where we are currently?
Up
It's about 7.
what are we up to date?
Up to date, so based,
On this.
oh, we ended, it was about 6%. Yes, ma'am, it was up about 6% over FY '18. That's where we ended in FY '19 in terms of the sales taxes.
So it's a good thing.
And currently, like I said, on the snapshot, the old loss fund, which also includes some investment income, is up about 9%, but the sales taxes themselves is up about 8%. Just sales taxes.
Good job, good job, good job.
Well, Mr.
No, I was just going to point out that this is a great, great report, but I think for people watching at home to think that there's this influx of money and that our revenue level, income level has risen by that amount, it's not completely accurate, because some of these, it is really good news because they are the type of revenue generators that could be a trend, which would allow us to have a little bit more operating revenue. But a lot of them are kind of one-offs, where they have had a spike, and that's great. It's going to help us, pad our fund balance and maybe even make some capital purchases. But it's important to note that it's not just another, $8 million, $7 million that we can spend on a month-to-month basis.
Right. Absolutely.
So, Mayor, let me just take this opportunity to thank our Finance Director, Angelica Alexander, and her team. She has a great team, lots of experience, but we're going to lose some of that experience. But she has a great team, does a great job. So thank you for what you do.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
She's sometimes, pardon? No. I don't want to call their names on air, but, we've got some people that's going to retire. Yeah.
She's like, no.
But
We're not losing them. We know where they'll be. They just won't be.
That's right, Mayor. Gone fishing, yeah. But we've got a great team, and that's great news. And she was so excited last week, and she walked up, and you heard me tell the mayor, we'll brief you next week, because we haven't had a chance to talk to the mayor, because she walked up and she shared the info. I'm like, we're not getting ready to discuss that right here, right now, And so, but it's good news, and she was excited, I'm excited, and I hope you are. With that, we're going to have our HR Director come and talk about Department of Labor overtime ruling.
Councilor Woodson.
Before we that, Mayor, I wanted to ask the Clerk of Council so I don't forget, to put my vote for item 1, 2, 3 as a yes, please. And to Angelica, you did an amazing job, you and your team. Thank you very much. We truly, truly appreciate it, because without you, we'll be lost and broke.
HR Director Aretha Hollowell.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. City
morning.
Manager, Mayor, and Council. This will be a very brief presentation today with regard to the Department of Labor's final overtime ruling that I did want to share with you all, just for your information purposes and for our employees. In terms of this ruling by the Department of Labor that was passed back in September of this year and will be implemented in January of 2020. So this is just to share with you how the Columbus Consolidated Government will be complying with this Department of Labor's ruling. So the Department of Labor, it updated its regulations that are issued under the Fair Labor Standards Act to allow for workers to be entitled, more workers to be entitled to overtime pay by updating, they're doing this by updating the salary threshold. You may recall back in 2016, the Department of Labor made a similar type of ruling in in 2016. However, it was halted by the courts and was not passed, but it's come up again, and it is expected that it will be implemented in January of 2020. So the City of Columbus has made preparation to implement that. And as seen here, this is expected to impact workers, 1.3 million workers in the United States. And the goal, of course, is to ensure that workers are fairly compensated for the work that they do. So now there are several key provisions of this overtime ruling. There are 4 provisions that were published by the Department of Labor. I won't spend time on all 4 of them because they do not, the CCG is not impacted by them. The only one that we need to concentrate on and that we've worked on is the very first one there in terms of the exemption rule. In terms of, so it's the raises standards. The salary threshold standard was since 2004 for exempt status was at $23,660 annually. That's how much a person had to make in order to be classified as exempt under this rule. This new salary thresholds moves that to $35,568 annually in order for a person to be classified as exempt. Again, I won't go over the others because the City of Columbus is not impacted by those, but I list them on here so that you'll know that there are other things that the DOL did pass. The number 2 has to do with the highly compensated employees, does not impact us. The other, number 3, has to do with the ability to be able to provide discretionary incentives and bonuses up to 10% to reach that annual salary threshold. But again, these do not impact the Columbus Consolidated Government. So in terms of our options of how we might go about implementing this final DOL ruling, there are things that we can do. Here are some of what our options would be. We could change our employee pay status from non-exempt if their salary is less than $35,568. We can limit the employee's work hours to 40 hours per week. We can pay overtime and compensatory time at time and a half for any time that's worked over 40 hours in a week. And we can raise the employee's salary above this threshold of $35,568 if we have employees that are classified as exempt and make less than the $35,568. And for the most part, the Columbus Consolidated Government is already in compliance with this. So for those folks that would be under this exemption category, the duties test, what would cause you to be exempt does not change in terms of this particular group of exempt folks. Is executive, administrative, and professional exemptions. The duties test to become exempt does not change. The only thing that changes here is the salary threshold. So the impact.
What does that mean?
What qualifies a person to be exempt? For example, you supervise X number of people, typically at least 2 people. Your your responsibility is to make certain types of decisions. You have the ability to make decisions like hiring or firing, those sorts of things. You're given a certain amount of responsibility. And so the impact to local government, state and local governments like CCG must comply with the final ruling, and we are. And the difference, one of the difference for local governments and state governments is that we can pay via comp time or compensatory time in lieu of overtime. That's a benefit that local and state governments have that the private sector cannot do. So in terms of how does this actually impact us, local government and our employees that are currently working for us? So we look at hourly employees, part-time, temporary, seasonal workers. Those group of employees are already eligible to receive overtime and/or comp time. So this ruling does not impact them. There is no change. For law enforcement, fire protection, emergency response personnel, those folks are already eligible to receive overtime and/or comp time. So this rule does not impact them. In terms of non-exempt employees, if you're already classified as non-exempt, then you are already eligible to receive comp time or overtime. So this ruling does not impact those employees. If you by chance have an employee that has a title of salaried worker, but they are non-exempt, they will continue to be eligible to receive comp time and overtime. So this rule does not impact them. So how is the Columbus Consolidated Government going about making an assessment and being able to apply and implement this rule? So these are the steps that we have taken. And one of the good things, as I said, because we did this, I guess like a trial run, you might say, back in 2016, we went through this process already. So this implementation is fairly easy for us because we have done it before. So one of the first things that we've done is we review our current workforce. We took a look at all our employees. We applied the salary test, applying the salary test to determine how many of our employees make more or less than the $35,568, and then what category did they fall in? Are they exempt or are they non-exempt? And then, of course, we engaged the departments for those employees where we might have employees that are classified as exempt but make less than the $35,568. And then, of course, we look at the budget impact, which, as I'll discuss on my next slide, is expected to be very minimal. So for those folks that would be classified as exempt but make less than the $35,568, their position status is being changed to non-exempt. What that does, it makes those employees now eligible to receive either comp time or overtime. So what we cannot do is say what the exact budget impact of that will be, because that will become effective January 1 of 2020. What I will say is the budget impact is expected to be very minimum because the number of employees it impacted is very small, and what I mean by very small, like 20 or less. And those employees will either receive comp time at time and a half or overtime at 1.5 times the rate.
And that can be controlled by department heads.
That is correct.
So,
That is correct. And just so finally, as I've already stated, those positions that are classified as exempt and earn less than $35,568 have already been reviewed, and their position status will be adjusted to non-exempt. And of course, by January 1 of 2020, this will be implemented, and we will continue to pay our employees who earn overtime or comp time, as we're already doing that now. Again, this ruling impacts us very little, unlike back in 2016 when the proposed threshold was at $47,000, but because it's at $35,563, we have very few employees to consider whether they are either non-exempt or exempt and make less than that $35,568. So that's my presentation, and I will entertain any questions if you have them.
At this time, I do not see any questions. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Holloway,
Well-
for the presentation.
Counselor, I'm going to ask, you stay there for a second. You didn't know I was going to ask you to do this, but would you remind the council members, and I want you to remind them so that employees who are watching can hear this, there's a pay adjustment for employees in January.
Right.
Some will get 1%, some will get 2%. Would you kind of tell us about that?
Sure. During the FY20 budget, council approved a pay increase for employees. So all employees will receive a 1%. All full-time regular and part-time regular employees will receive a 1% pay increase come January 1 of 2020. And all full-time employees who were on payroll as of June 30th, 2018 will receive an additional 1% pay increase come January 1 of 2020. So a percentage of employees will receive a 2% pay increase, and then another percentage of employees, those employees that were hired after on July 1 or after in 2018 will receive a 1% pay increase, and those part-time employees will also receive a 1% pay increase.
So I need you to say the dates again. So if you were on payroll,
As of June 30th of if you were on payroll as of June 30th, 2018, you will receive a 2% pay increase.
But if-
This is for full-time employees.
so if you were on payroll June 26 of 2018, you will get 1%.
You will get 2.
Say it again now.
Okay, if you were on payroll, if you were hired and working for the city, and you were on our payroll as a full-time employee as of June 30th
Prior
of
to-
2018, you will receive a 2% pay increase.
Yes, but my question is, if you were on payroll the day before, or the day after
Day after.
June 30th, that's what I need to say.
July 1st, sure. So if you, yeah,
This is why we're going over it.
That's why that's why I'm doing it. That was a test. That was a test. So if you were on payroll July 1, 2018,
you will receive, and you're a full-time regular employee,
You
you
will
will
receive-
receive a 1%
so
pay
you
increase.
missed it by one day.
That is correct. But
And-
you will receive a 1% pay increase. Yes.
You
and-
okay?
I am okay now. That was a test. But I just want to make sure, because employees, we're going to send out an all-user email,
Right,
and we're going to ask department heads to help make sure they communicate this, but someone's not going to get it,
right,
and we want them to get it right.
And
absolutely.
if they don't get it, don't call the city managers
Right.
or the mayor, by the way.
Call HR somewhere. But thank you, HR Director Rita Hollowell. Next, just very quickly, Deputy City Manager Hodge is going to do a capital projects survey update.
So just a quick update. Last week I was here and we went through kind of the planning process on capital projects. We held 8 public meetings in October and November. And one of our next steps that we talked about was having that survey available online. So just wanted to provide the citizens with that link. So if you go to the city's homepage, you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a 2020 capital projects survey. All you need to do is click on the link, and it will take you to that survey. Provides a brief overview of what we're requiring citizens to do. We definitely want their input. We received 31 surveys as a result of the public meetings. We have now received 491 surveys through the online process that we just recently launched at the end of last week. So we're getting really good traffic. I just want to get as many surveys. We'll have this open until January 15th. So please share this on your social media pages and direct citizens to this site to provide that input. But as you scroll down, we're asking that you provide us the information if you think any of these projects on the list are things that We must do things that is not necessarily the highest priority, and then the final is things that can wait for another day. We're utilizing this to create an A, B, and C list in order to move forward with the capital projects. And then at the end of the survey, we have all the different categories: public safety, parks and rec, golf courses, trade center, civic center, the government center and judicial center is on here as well, IT, road projects. But at the bottom, we'll have a list where you can give us your feedback. You can provide projects that you did not see on the list, as well as comments. And we've received a lot of really good comments and suggestions through this process that will be coming back in January and sharing the results of that with council, as well as a second round of public meetings on what we heard from the citizens, not just from the meetings, but also from the survey. So I just wanted to make sure everyone is processing their survey online and giving us their feedback.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilor Huff?
Great presentation.
Thank you.
On the second round of meetings, will we be doing another group of 8?
That will be up to council. We had told each area that we would be coming back. We didn't get a lot of participation, but we are open to do as many public meetings as necessary. We might want to do some Facebook Live and some of those things, and maybe we'll get a little more participation from those types of meetings. But we'll definitely be scheduling those.
Okay, because I'm thinking in my situation, and Councilor Woodson, possibly Councilor Thompson, that we could find a general point maybe for the 3 districts to have one meeting and have a better turnout.
I think that would be excellent to do that.
Okay.
And, hopefully we'll have a better turnout once we are publicizing, we are presenting what we heard. We're presenting a list. I think people will be interested in showing up to see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So the final update, Mayor and Council, I'm going to call on Director Pat Beegler for a tree canopy update. We've been talking about trees and tearing up driveway aprons and tearing up yards, and so she's going to talk to us about those things today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let's see. Before I get started on the actual presentation, I'd like to introduce the new city arborist, Mike Bird. I'm not going to read his credentials, but Mike, please stand up.
Welcome, Mike.
We have spent quite a bit of time going through the city ordinance, the UDO together, looking at all the references to trees in preparation for this presentation. And we've seen some things that we can alter, so I'll be talking about those today. His duties not only include being city arborist, but also managing the city's tree inventory and managing both beautification and urban forestry. This is a refresher from last time I talked. Urban Forestry has 21 employees. We get about 3,600 work requests per year. If you get down to it, there are something like 1.5 million to 2 million trees on city-owned property within the county. And if you just want to even that out, it's about 100,000 trees per employee in that division. So it is not a heavily staffed division by any means. The city ordinance gives the arborist some responsibilities specifically to protect the trees on public and private property. Notice it says both private and public, now and into the future. Allow tree removal only when a hardship exists, not simply for inconvenience, and the language is very specific. Prepare a plan to prevent canopy loss and maintain the trees. Pruning is our most needed maintenance, or the maintenance that's most often required. I'm going to address specific issues rather than cover the whole world. These are the 6 that have come up the most. with tree removal request, driveway damage, the large tree at South Commons, Georgia Power Agreement, canopy loss, and tree maintenance and pruning. Go through this as smoothly and as quickly as we can. Tree removal is obviously the most controversial. I hear about it a lot from citizens. We hear about it from council. Last year we got 1,478 tree calls. 49% of those calls that were actually caused to remove the trees, and we did so. So over 700 trees were removed last year when citizens called in and said, I have this tree in my front yard, it's in the right-of-way, and we go out and check it out. We will remove the tree if the health rating is below 50, and then we look at other factors such as inadequate growing space, undesirable species, and if roots are causing damage, which we evaluate as a hardship. And then we do kind of a combination. If you've got a health rating of 55, but other things that are questionable and it's clear the tree needs to go, then we'll go ahead and remove it. So it's not a hard and fast, simply looking at the health of the tree. We do look at other factors. These are two quotes from the ordinance that I think that you needed to see just to make sure. It says, in extraordinary conditions pertaining to the property in question that would result in a particular hardship to the owner, as distinguished from a minor inconvenience if the strict letter of these regulations were carried out. And we do do our best to interpret that appropriately when we're making decisions about trees. In addition, it says where the city shall be responsible for appropriate corrective measures which are least damaging to the tree. So the emphasis is very, very much in the UDO on protecting trees as much as we possibly can. We won't remove the tree if we go out. We get a lot of them that turn out to be on private property, and that then is the responsibility of the property owner to remove the tree. Sometimes it's not the danger the city thinks. We have some pines out there that lean something awful, but when we look at them, there's no upheaval, there's no instability there, and we don't remove them because they're leaning. Trees are not causing the damage alleged by the citizen, and we very frequently have that's damaging my house, it's damaging this, it's damaging that. And in many cases it is, but in a lot of cases it is not. And we have to look at that in as common sense a manner as we possibly can. This is one of those leaning trees, perfectly sound. There's no upheaval at the root system, but it does make a lot of people very uncomfortable. And anytime someone calls, we go out and check for safety immediately or as quickly as we can. And usually if there's a hint of a safety issue, we're there within 24 hours or less, same day. To look at, and I know there is a desire to remove or allow removal of more trees from the public right-of-way in front of people's homes than a lot of people would like, and this is where the controversy lies. I've identified 3 options that we can put into place if you so choose. So let me talk you through those. The first, of course, is to enhance our existing process. We're trying to be as flexible as possible and as reasonable when we look at other considerations besides just tree health. We have actually a very multi-layered appeal process that has, to my knowledge, never been utilized. We want to fully implement that appeals process as it's laid out in the ordinance. We want to develop, and we're talking about this, but we're not far enough along to give you any details, to develop a program for cutting or blocking roots where it's appropriate. And then we'd have to evaluate the cost of that root treatment program if we do that once we can confirm what that looks like. If you look at the process, it's something we referred citizens to, but we haven't handed them a package and said, here's the appeals process, and we're going to be doing that. We're putting an appeals package together. The citizen calls 311, we go out and check it for safety immediately. If it is a safety issue, an imminent safety issue, we go out and remove the tree quickly. If not, we also then take the time to check if the tree is on city property, and we will evaluate the tree. Once staff makes that recommendation, advises the citizen, we either take the tree down or we tell them, we're sorry, no. If that removal is denied and the city wants to appeal, they can appeal first officially to the city arborist. And we've not done this before, but we want to make it a little bit more formal and have the citizen come back and say, I am formally appealing the process. That could be done just by simply calling 311. So we have something that's in the record. We want to make sure that we have that record. The ordinance actually says that the city arborist will investigate and respond by registered letter. And we've never had the formal appeal process, so we haven't used the registered letter, but we will be doing that in the future. If the removal is again denied, he goes out and looks at it, says no, then the citizen has a right to appeal to the tree board or the board of tree experts. They are working on, and we've been working closely with them over the last few months, they've been working on an appeals format and how they want to handle that. And then lastly, if they deny removal, the ordinance allows the citizen to appeal to city council. So we are putting together a package, an appeals package we can hand to citizens.
Hang on just a second. Councilor Thomas?
Ms. Bigler, the person who goes out to check the tree is not necessarily the city arborist, is that true?
That is true. We
So
have people
in
who
the
are trained and
process-
certified.
In the process, if this staff person who's not the city arborist goes out and says, no, this is not something we deal with, then I can appeal to the city arborist.
Correct.
And if the city arborist says, no, it's not something, I can then go to the tree board.
Correct?
And if the tree board says no, I can then come to council.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I've got that sequence there. Thank you.
And I put it in here so that it was, I hope, very clear what the appeal process is. The second option, of course, is to expand the criteria at city expense. And, I've heard a lot of, I don't like the roots, I can't grow grass, all of those things that are so contentious. If you were to change what's in the ordinance to allow for removal of more of those trees, then there is a question about what kind of criteria do you use, how would you want to expand it, but then also understand that there is also a cost that goes with that. And if we were to remove 600 additional trees per year, we would need 2 more crews with all the equipment they need. So we'd be looking at $1.25 million worth of equipment and about $250,000 per year for manpower. So whatever, if we open that door completely, then I think there'll be many more than 600 trees that people will want removed. That is something that would need to be considered, and we would do an estimate. If we could determine what that criteria was, we can do an estimate for what we think it'll cost. But as things stand now, we're removing about 700 trees a year, and that's all our staff can handle. I'm sorry? We had 1,400. We took down about 700. We turned down about 700. Now, again, some of those are because they're on private property. Some of them are because, for other reasons. Not nearly as many, not that full amount, if we're talking about just I don't like the roots here. Does that make sense? Got it. Okay. The third option is one that you could also consider. If city removal is denied, then the resident could apply for a permit. The ordinance already identifies a permit process, which we generally apply to businesses. $35 fee. The tree must meet nuisance criteria. And I have that definition in this presentation. Under that criteria, the citizen would remove the tree at their own expense and then have to replace the tree either on their property or paying into the tree fund for replacement. This is the definition of a nuisance that is currently in the ordinance. So any kind of endangering life, health, safety. And then here's some additional language, basically saying, if you do any prune, climb with spikes, break, damage, remove, kill, or cause to be killed any tree, that's illegal unless you have a permit from the arborist. And you can't disturb or cut or interfere with any roots within the drip line. It addresses permit fees, it addresses requests and how to do that, and then says if you put trees back, you have to meet the standards that are in the UDO also.
Excuse me, Pat. Councilor House?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pat, is this for, Director Bigler, is this for trees that are on city property that a citizen wants to remove because
Yes.
it feels they're in the way? So if it's on their own private property, this is not what we're talking about?
No, on private property, those trees are the property of the property owner, and they can
Okay.
remove the trees if they wish.
Okay, thank you.
It's only those that are in their front yard that are on the public right-of-way. So, 3 options for you all to look at and consider. The enhanced appeal process we're actually moving into now. We want to be as helpful as we can be within the strictures of the UDO. The extended definition would definitely require an ordinance change and additional funding for removal crews.